Salut tout le monde, bienvenue au CanFC. Today is going to be in English because we have a great guest, and I'm really happy to have her in our show. We will be diving into topic that football clubs, fans, and business can no longer ignore. I'm talking about sustainability, and can we also enjoying the game while saving the planet? So to help us break it down, we have a special guest, Monika Dharia, founder of Green Gear Supply. So it's a company that creating eco-friendly rain ponchos and all the gear for stadiums, festival or outdoor events. Monika, welcome to CanFC.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right. Before we get into the big question, let's start with something simple. What's the surreal moment from your journey so far? Was it winning the Yale Sustainable Venture Prize or seeing your product for the first time in a stadium?
Oh, that's a good question. I think both of them were really exciting moments, just in different ways. I think when we won the Yale Saban Prize, that was just the moment of this is something, like this is something great that we have. And I think seeing the bags in person at Link Financial Field, which is where the Philadelphia Eagles play, that was also a big moment. And most recently, like seeing them at REI and selling out was also really good. So I think in general, like with the business, there's definitely a bunch of surreal moments, and I think that helps with some of the lows you occasionally get. So I really can't rank them. They're just great in different ways.
Perfect. So in the tradition, now it's time for the jingle, and then we're gonna have back to this great conversation incoming.
Sounds good.
Les pionniers du podcast soccer. C'est la référence soccer à Montréal. Tout simplement les meilleurs. C'est le Cannes Football Club. La poutine du soccer.
Monika, it's really a great pleasure to have you in our podcast. It's an honor to have someone that who is not really into the football, but I can learn teach us so much. Monika, your background combines engineering, entrepreneurship, sustainability. How did the idea come about to create the product that protects fans from rains, but also protecting also the planet?
Yeah, so I founded my company about 8 years ago now. While I was a student at Duke University, I was a sophomore at the time, and I was trying to source rain gear for our campus. It rains all the time on Duke's campus, and everything's really spread apart. Once you leave your dorm, you're typically out for the day. Um, so there were plenty of times when I was just stuck and I had to go to classes soaking wet because the rainstorms were also really tough there. And I was looking at sustainable rain ponchos because logistically rental umbrellas weren't working. And when I tested those options that were available with my environmental engineering professors, I found that a lot of them were doing more harm than good for the environment. And I just felt like there could be a better option out there. And that's why I decided to create my own. So it started with the rain poncho, and we are focused on continuously improving the product. And in the meantime, other product ideas like clear bags for clear bag policies have come about too.
Well, we also know that a football stadium generate a ton of waste
Yeah.
every match. At what point did you see the opportunity to integrate green gear into the sports ecosystem?
Yeah. So when I was first starting my company, I was just looking at who would be potential options, like where the market and where the early adopters would be. And that's when I saw sports.
Mm.
I think sports in general, the fan base is increasingly becoming younger and Gen Z, and sustainability is becoming more and more important to them. And that's where I learned that sports could be a great sector to focus on. We also got the most initial buy-in from the sports sector too, and the most excitement there as well.
There's a lot of But within clubs like Forest Green Rovers that become carbon neutral, we also see events like the World Cup in Qatar claim to be carbon neutral, but
Yeah.
many experts call that greenwashing.
Mhm.
What's your take? Can a World Cup or even just MLS club can actually be carbon neutral, or is it just marketing?
Yeah, so carbon neutral tends to mean different things in the context you say it in. So there's scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. And it's really all relative based on how you put your constraints. So if you're doing scope 1 emissions, yes, like people, it's much easier to be carbon neutral than it is if you're including scope 3 emissions. So that's a big case there. It's really how they're defining it. When I look at clubs and stadiums and how they are approaching carbon measurements as well, it is just also really difficult too. At a recent conference, I actually learned about this because I did a workshop where I was like a decision maker trying to decide how we would address our carbon footprint and how we would measure it. And there's so many factors that you have to consider or decide to consider. Like, for example, if you are a venue and a concert comes in and they bring all of the stuff to set it up at your stadium, whose carbon footprint is that associated with? Is it your stadium's carbon footprint, or is it the concert's
Oh.
carbon footprint? And where does that accountability lie? So I think as we start measuring carbon footprints, that question is going to become more and more standardized as to whose responsibility that lies in. But yeah, I think right now it's the term carbon neutral is really contingent on how it's defined.
Good. No, I see. I see. But yeah, let's bring in home with in Montreal. So imagine you're in Montreal. You get a call from CF Montreal saying, "Monika, we want to be the most sustainable club in MLS.
Yeah.
Where do we start? What's your first move?"
Yeah, so usually when I'm talking to a stadium or in general with a sports team, I'll ask them about their waste first. So I would see, and that's funny because I'm a procurement person, but I'm trying to dive into their waste. And based on how people are reacting with your products, how the type of fan base you have, and what
Hmm.
your waste management looks like in your local area is going to really drive what product decisions you can make. And I think a good example is the waste infrastructure in like Florida is going to vary vastly from the one in New York. This is a US example.
Mhm.
Probably the same for Canada is Montreal is going to be very different than Calgary. Um, some sports teams might have access to composting, some might not. And so that's how I would first help them address it is let's look at your waste. Let's see what's leaving the stadium. Let's check out your fan base and really try to build like a really good understanding of that. And then we could start looking at your products.
Great.
Sometimes, oh, go ahead.
So let's switch perspectives. As fans, we show up to the stadium, we buy food, we wear jersey, maybe hopefully we grab a poncho when it rains. So
Yeah.
what should fans be looking for to make sure they're not falling into fake green products?
Yeah. I think going back on that too, I'm also wondering, like, if the question is whether fans should go in being concerned they're falling for a fake green product, or whether they should be going in to look to do more.
Yeah,
Um,
actually both, because we have to
y-
be more aware, and like I think that the theme of greenwashing it comes a lot, and maybe when we trying to be more conscious, we don't want to fall into
to trap and
exactly, and
yeah,
and also doing our part, just just doing our part.
yeah, and I think for greenwashing, I think the best way for that is ask questions. Like, I think every
Mhm.
stadium and venue has people you could talk to ask those questions to. So if there's something you don't understand, like, try to understand it And if it's not checking out, that's probably a bad sign on what the initiative is. That's at least the way that I try to approach things when I'm trying to make decisions. For things that a fan can do when they go to the venue, I think there's a lot of things. I also think that I'm hoping sports teams will try to take the lead on that and not put it on the fans in general. But when there is an initiative that sports teams are doing, I think calling it out really helps, like putting it in any surveys they get, because that helps those initiatives go through and also gives the sustainability managers leverage to put in more initiatives like that. So giving positive feedback for the initiatives that are there are always great. Complying with sorting. A lot of stadiums are trying to move towards composting or different waste streams in general. So not just taking the extra 5 seconds to learn about how to sort it also helps. But overall, I think my feedback would be, for a green initiative you don't understand, ask questions. And for those that do exist and that you like, give positive.
Let's talk about the biggest initiative from my point of view. I can call you a champion because I think that you do won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. You team up with the Eagles and please walk us through this amazing partnership you had with Philadelphia Eagles, now the current Super Bowl champions. Amazing accomplishment from you guys. So what's going on, how that's work, and please just walk us through.
Yeah, so I met Norman and the folks from the Eagles in 2019. This was through Green Sports Alliance, and from there we kind of just stayed in touch for a little bit as I was developing the products, even through COVID and everything. In late 2021, early 2022, I was like, hey, I'm ready to like give you all this product and to try it out. They purchased the ponchos right away for their employees. And then in late 2022, early 2023, the clear bag policy started becoming more and more popular, and they were having issues with that. And so that's when they came to me and asked, like, do you think there's a solution here? And I was like, yeah, there's some stuff with like the ponchos that we can't do yet that I would love to test with the bags. And so that's exactly what I did. Like, they're made in the US. I upgraded the material a little bit, and the Eagles were willing to test that out for us, and it went really well. And we're noticing, and that was the biggest thing with that, is because so many other teams are having that issue too. So this year our main goal is really expanding it and bringing the solution out to more teams now that it's been really well vetted and tested. So that's how that's been started. It's mainly
that's so great. You mentioned, okay, that's the thing. Your poncho, customer, we can customize your poncho, right? What I saw online was the colors of the Eagles, and basically each organization that you're working with, you can have the right colors or logo, whatever. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. So you could put your logo on the poncho and we could design it. Normally I encourage people to put it on the back, but it's pretty customizable.
And you mentioned COVID, and I think this is important because you did something very special during this time, right?
Yeah, so to kind of help our supply chain during that time, we shifted Green Gear into, it was still a business, but we shifted it more towards like a nonprofit model. And what we did was we used our supply chain to help provide healthcare workers with PPE. So ponchos were really helpful during that time for intubations because the doctors can see through it. And this part's a little gross, but a lot of times when they were intubating patients, blood would squirt out. So the poncho was really helpful because it covered the neck, allowed doctors to see through it, but helped prevent them from getting squirted with blood. And we tested that out first at Stony Brook. So we gave some to the healthcare workers in Stony Brook to see like if it's helpful at all. That's what they found. And then we got quickly moving to provide it to more healthcare workers, and we ended up sending more to Stony Brook Hospital, Brooklyn Hospital, and we also sent it to remote healthcare workers in Liberia too.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing, and that worked really well for you at the end. Then it's just amazing. You started with the poncho, but there's also bags, right? And
Yeah.
other product. What's the process, to choose which product to develop?
Yeah, I think it's my customers.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
the feedback, basically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the customers, they all really want, like, a lot of them were asking about the clear bag policy, particularly in sports, and if there's anything more sustainable we could do there. So that's what really drove me to that one. And we'll keep developing that product as we also keep getting buyers for the product too. So that's what really drives those decisions. A lot of times I'll start with a prototype and I'll just start selling it and then I'll make it after.
Okay, good. Yeah, makes sense. And that's funny because you mentioned a lot of new policies that are in stadium, and we can see that Green Gear make just made her place, its place to the sport, to the sport world. But
Yeah.
um, is it is it still tough to convince sports organization, to bet into durable solution like yours?
Yeah. So I think if you have two products, one is sustainable and one is not, 9 times out of 10, the sports teams will go with the more sustainable option. It comes down to cost,
Yeah.
which I think typically needs to have a lot of buy-in to do, and that's what's holding more sustainable solutions back, and potentially existing supplier arrangements. But I think it's mostly the price that's holding it back right now. So as we find solutions to overcome that, I think that's how those solutions will get implemented. One interesting thing that I'm finding is, like, take marathons. They have a lot of waste
Yeah.
and products that are, like, just part of the process right now. And one calculation I made is, like, for about $5 extra per person, you could revamp the entire system. You could have sustainable clear bags for them. You could have a different cup option or reusable bottle option for runners.
Mhm.
We could have recycling options for the gels. And you could also look at recycling options for heat sheets or better heat sheets too. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, what if you just gave runners that option and tested it out that way? I think a lot of people would opt in.
But do you feel that clubs or leagues, even sport events like you mentioned with the marathon, do they have conscience of their ecological impact? Is it a gimmick, or there's like a trend that a real one that makes them more conscious and more, okay, we have to do something, we have to invest this $5 extra, to make a difference.
Yeah, so I think a lot of teams, when they're hiring a sustainability person, that shows a big commitment
Oh.
because that's a large cost to do that. And a lot of
Explain this role and the mandate of this person.
Yeah, so a lot of sports teams in Canada and in the US, they're starting to hire sustainability managers, which has become a growing field in, like, the past 5 years. Like, I want to say, like, in some leagues, the number of sustainability managers have gone from, like, 1 to 15 or 20 in the past 5 years.
Wow.
So I think that shows a pretty strong commitment to sustainability in general. And I think what's going to happen over time is that sustainability manager's relationship with maybe the operations people and having those new interactions take place. So I think in my mind, whenever I see a team having a sustainability manager, I'm like, okay, have a commitment to this. Like, you don't just hire an extra person, especially in the sports when they have limited actually internal employees. You're typically just not doing that for show. That shows like a pretty strong commitment there.
I talked a lot about organization and also fans, but I think there's a third player and actually players that could be ambassador for change. Imagine like a player like Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi wearing a poncho green gear during the rain, end of the game. This changed everything, right? I think that. Don't you think that the players have also a role to play in this evolution for make the sport more sustainable?
Yeah, so that's actually one of our nonprofit partners, EcoAthletes. They're actually working right now to give athletes the tools to become sustainability champions and speak on topics like this and choose like products that actually benefit the environment or are doing good, and helping them figure out that between maybe like other products that aren't doing that but may have bad marketing there. So I completely agree with that. That's why they're one of our nonprofit partners, is really like, if sports players can get into the realm of advocating for sustainability, that is going to be a huge thing that drives it. I think there's a statistic that now, like, role models change over time, like in society. Let's say like 2,000 years ago it was philosophers. This may not be correct, but let's say 500 years ago it was doctors. Today it's athletes, and athletes have the biggest voice in our society. So equipping them with things like that could really make a difference too. So there is definitely a third player.
In 10 years, do you imagine a football world like a soccer? But I'm saying football, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's called football. I'm happy.
Do you imagine a football world where all stadiums are zero waste, jerseys are made from recycled materials, every event is designed to minimize its carbon footprint, or are we still far from that? I'm talking 10 years.
Yeah, so I think that all depends on the owners. There are a lot of owners that are bought into sustainability and really believe in it and will advocate for it and believe that they can make a change in there. There are some, however, where this is a last priority for them, or is not a priority. So what I see happening in 10 years is it's almost like an adoption curve. I think 50 to 75% of the football clubs will do it, and they're going to be zero waste. They're going to really fight for this, but there's going to be potentially 25% that are not. But I do think we could change that, because I think of those as laggards, is what I call them, or late adopters, where they do it once they have to. And I think that's where the fans and the players can come in, because they could kind of force that change to happen.
Yeah, right. But if you add a message for clubs, players, and fans like that listen right now and are really curious of what you've done, what Green Gear is, what would you say to encourage them, to take actions in this transition to sustainability?
Yeah, what would I say to fans to encourage them, or fans and players?
Yeah, to fans. I don't know if that you can be that could be to encourage them, but no, that could be maybe to inform and educate them, because sometimes when we know more about the issue, we are more tending to to take actions.
Yeah, like I think in terms of like, so one, like I started my company 8 years ago, and there's a lot that I'm doing right now in the sustainability space, and I'm just one person. I have a few people helping me, and I have employees now too. But that goes to say that one person can do a lot. So that's one piece that I would tell players.
And you won a lot of prize for that, and it's just your entrepreneurial journey is really fascinating. I dig through a lot, and I was like, oh wow, this is so great, and all the hardship you face, because let's face it, you're being a woman in tech, in sports, in just this not easy, and you managed to go through and to make your this like project to a startup to now a bigger and bigger enterprise. So this is really inspiring.
Yeah, and I hope it'll encourage others to do the same too. And the second piece that I would want to tell players and fans as well is, you don't have to go ahead and start a company and dedicate like 8 years of your life and more to it. You can also just speak up. A lot of times, like giving positive feedback to initiatives like this, or calling out ones like in surveys or learning about them. Like I wouldn't call out something unless you've done your research on it. But I think doing stuff like that can make a big impact too. Like, for example, 3 people can potentially give a new sustainability initiative positive feedback, and that gives the managers a lot of kind of leverage to get more initiatives like that across.
Yeah. So you can start small, you can start solo, but just you have to start somewhere and run. Yes, I totally agree with you. Monika, thank you very much, because that was a fascinating conversation. That was really different from what we do in the podcast, but that showed that football can connect with a lot of what's going on in our society. So where can people follow Green Gear? And how can clubs and fans can engage with you?
Yeah, so few ways. So one is our website, greengearsupply.com. LinkedIn and Instagram are great. Those are both at Green Gear Supply. And you could also always email us at info@greengearsupply.com. But we're very responsive on all of those channels.
So hopefully you do have a lot of question and contacts through this moment interview for all football fans up there that want to make a difference. Remember, it's just not about what happened on the pitch, but also the choice that we make every day. So thanks, Monika, to remind us that, and see you next time at the KNFC podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great.